In 2007, Steve Jobs introduced an iPhone that changed our lives. However, in reality, at that time, what Steve Jobs introduced was not an iPhone that we all know today. No, it was a demo of a product that in reality barely existed. That demo had hundreds of problems, didn't work at all. Most importantly, Steve Jobs didn't have one single demo which could perform all the main functions of an iPhone. And because of that, in his introduction event, he was frequently changing the phones he was using for introduction. He used many different iPhones separately that could perform only one function but couldn't do another. Only God knows how he managed to display this product in a way that the whole world wanted to buy it next day. But somehow he did it. But how he managed to develop and finish an actual iPhone after 6 months, or how he made Bill Gates wait for 1 hour without reason. These are the stories that we're gonna talk right now. But before that, don't forget to subscribe.
Outside of the window, I was sticking with you. We were only kids then.
Steve Jobs has a lot of amazing stories that wasn't published in his book. Software engineer Randy Adams recalls the time when Bill Gates showed up at the Next for a meeting. It was fall of 1986. The receptionist downstairs called Steve, who was upstairs, to let him know that Gates was in the lobby. I could see him sitting in his desk, not really busy, but he didn't get up or call Gates up. In fact, he left him waiting in the lobby for an hour, for no reason. That story shows very well how great of a relationship they had. Randy also remembers when Steve was waiting in his company Next for Ross Perot, who was an investor. Steve said to Randy, "Let's hide our Porsches." Why? "We don't want him to think we have a lot of money." Then they moved the cars around to the back of a building in Palo Alto, and after a meeting, Perot invested 20 million in the company. By the way, same year Steve dressed up as a Santa Claus and handed out $100 bills to employees. With that, Jobs was constantly telling employees who had done something he didn't like, "Fire yourself." Was he joking? Well, no one knew, but if Steve was serious, they would see a termination notice next day on the desk. Mark Andreessen, venture capitalist, recalls a double date he had with Jobs a few months before the original iPhone was introduced. "My wife and I went out to dinner with Steve and his wife. Sitting outside of the restaurant, Steve pulled his personal prototype iPhone out of his jeans pocket and said, 'Here, let me show you something.' After seeing iPhone and being amazed, I said, 'Steve, don't you think it's going to be a problem not having a physical keyboard? Are people really going to be okay typing directly on the screen?' He looked me right in the eye with that piercing gaze and said, 'They will get used to it.'" Regis McKenna, Apple's original marketing specialist, remembers, "I bought 5 iMacs as a Christmas gift for our grandchildren. We watched them open their presents, and when 5-year-old Molly opened her iMac, she said, 'Life is good.' Unfortunately, Molly's iMac developed a problem after using it for few hours. The disk drive door wouldn't open. The dealer told me he was not authorized to exchange the computer for another one because of Apple's policy. I sent an email to Steve and asked him about Apple's return exchange policy on a new product. Within a few minutes, my phone rang. It was Steve. He asked me, what was the problem? And the name of the dealer. 'I'll call you back,' he said. A few minutes later, the phone rang and it was a very apologetic dealer. 'I have a new iMac here for your granddaughter,' he said. Let's get back to the original iPhone story. So, when Steve Jobs introduced an iPhone, after 6 months it was released. But how they managed it in 6 months? For those working on iPhone, the next 6 months would be the most stressful of their careers. Screaming, fighting, hating each other was part of the job. Engineers were going crazy from all-night coding sessions without sleeping. Key features of iPhone were far from perfect. Its memory and virtual keyboard still didn't work. The iPhone is the reason I'm divorced, Andy Grigon said, a senior iPhone engineer. iPhone makes its technology look and feel easy to use, but there was nothing easy about making the iPhone. Eventually, despite feuding and relentless deadline pressure, the iPhone remarkably stayed on the schedule. For its June 29 launch, Apple sold 270,000 iPhones in the first 2 days. In the next 6 months, Apple sold another 3.4 million iPhones. At the same time, the cell phone industry was changed forever.